He only brushed the droplets of water from the brim of his hat, yet the woman across from him felt her heartstrings stirred by that simple gesture.
Mr. Fincannon, it's a pleasure to meet you. I hope you and Ugly here.
From the very first moment Tristan laid eyes on Susanna, he fell in love with her at first sight. But no matter how strong his feelings were, he had to suppress the flames burning inside his heart, for Susanna was his younger brother's fiancée. However, his eldest brother quickly noticed the unusual atmosphere between them, and the reason he could see through it all was not only because of his delicate insight, but also because he too harbored unspoken emotions towards Susanna, so much so that he could read her every expression and movement with precision. At the dawn of the 20th century in the American West, it was a time when Native Americans were being forced from their homelands, and the land was being developed and colonized. The entire West was filled with brutal wars and conflicts, and Native Americans were slaughtered by the advancing settlers. Colonel William Ludlow despised the government's mass killings of Native Americans and had grown weary of endless wars, so he abandoned his rank and retreated with his wife and his native companion, One Stab, to a peaceful land far from worldly strife. William and his wife had 3 sons. Though the 3 brothers grew up together, their personalities were very different. The eldest, Alfred, was mature, worldly, and refined. The youngest, Samuel, was innocent, pure-hearted, and full of ideals. While the middle son, Tristan, was wild, untamed, and romantic by nature. In their father's words, Tristan's manners were not even as good as a dog's, yet both William and One Stab favored him the most. From a young age, Tristan had a deep passion for hunting. One Stab taught him that when a hunter takes out the heart of his prey and holds it in his palm, the soul of the animal is released. To prove he was a born hunter, one night he slipped into the forest alone, choosing a massive adult grizzly bear as his target. While the bear was asleep, Tristan reached out with trembling hands. But in the next instant, by sheer luck, Tristan escaped with only an arm injury from the bear's claws, while the bear itself suffered a far greater loss, one of its fingers severed by Tristan's blade. William and One Stab, rushing to rescue him, looked at the injured Tristan without a trace of worry. Instead, they were both happy for him. One Stab even praised Tristan, saying he had gained the bear's strength and had now become a true hunter. The beasts roaming the western plains and the harsh, endless winters made life unbearable for William's noble-born wife, Isabel. Eventually, she chose to return to the eastern cities. Once she left, she never came back again. In the blink of an eye, several years passed, and the 3 brothers each grew into men with their own paths. Alfred stayed by his father's side to help manage the ranch. Tristan roamed freely with One Stab, hunting and embracing his wild nature. Samuel went to live with his mother, where he studied at Harvard University, and he also found himself a beautiful girlfriend named Susanna. One day, William received a letter from his wife, Isabel. In the letter, she mentioned Samuel's romance with Susanna and told him that the 2 would soon visit the ranch. She hoped her husband and sons would make Susanna feel the warmth of family after her long journey. Before long, the day of Samuel and Susanna's arrival came, and William and Alfred went to the train station early to greet them. The moment she stepped off the train, Susanna greeted them warmly. Her enchanting beauty immediately captivated Alfred, and William was equally pleased with this warm and gracious future daughter-in-law. At that moment, Samuel asked where his second brother Tristan was, but they both knew that the free-spirited Tristan was probably off somewhere hunting. Sure enough, as they journeyed home, Tristan appeared with his game. Unlike his brothers who had dressed neatly for the occasion, Tristan wore a cowboy hat and a rugged hunter's attire. He politely greeted Susanna and offered his most sincere blessings. Yet it was precisely his wild and untamed spirit that left a lasting impression on Susanna. Soon the 3 brothers were playfully wrestling together on the ground, their most direct way of showing affection. With Susanna's arrival, the whole family became especially lively, and hints of unspoken tension floated around the dinner table. In the days that followed, they lived harmoniously, and Susanna even took the only photograph of the 3 brothers together. Though many thought she might struggle to adapt to life here, Susanna was not nearly as delicate as they imagined. It seemed she was born to belong in this place. Her presence also breathed new life into the ranch, as she ran freely like a spirit of the prairie, winning the affection of everyone around her. At night, Susanna played the piano while Samuel sang at the top of his voice, and everyone else listened in a state of enchantment.
Dear Isabel, how strange to have a cultivated woman in the house again, and how intoxicating. Indeed, to have all three of my sons under my roof again fills me with such a deep, quiet satisfaction that I thank God.
In the warmth and friendliness of the family, she quickly adapted to life here. On the ranch, little Isabel too told her, "When I grow up, I want to marry Tristan." Susanna realized that it seemed everyone here favored Tristan more. One evening, Susanna was drawn by the sound of galloping hooves. It turned out that Tristan was in the corral trying to tame a wild horse. He was thrown heavily to the ground, yet he got up, again and again. Though he was covered in mud, his eyes stayed firm until the horse was finally subdued. Standing by the window, Susanna's gaze flickered with admiration. In the days that followed, Susanna's vitality continued to infect everyone around her. Samuel excitedly told his second brother just how much he loved Susanna. Tristan could tell that they had not yet become a true couple, so he advised Samuel to take the initiative. But Samuel was still young. He only thought about staying by Susanna's side for life, and never gave much thought to anything else. Little did he know, this would become his lifelong regret. One day, a headline in the newspaper shattered the peace of the ranch. The European front had escalated, the German army had broken through the Allied defenses. Samuel believed the war had reached a historic turning point, and full of ideals, he wanted to enlist and serve his country. At the same time, Alfred also believed they could not stay uninvolved, that they had to resist Germany's invasion and fight for justice and freedom. Their father, however, knew all too well that war was nothing but a political game, and he did not want his sons to die in vain.
They said that about the War of Secession. They said it about the Indian Wars. That's what people who want to sell newspapers say about wars.
These are not the Indian Wars. We're fighting against naked aggression.
There will be no more talk of wars in this house! Damn it! Sorry, Susanna, please.
I'm going to Canada to enlist.
I'm going with him.
Seeing his two sons so determined, William no longer tried to stop them. Susanna, of course, did not want her fiancé to face danger alone, but she also knew there was nothing she could change. That night, she turned to Tristan, hoping he could persuade Samuel to reconsider. Susanna had lost her parents when she was young, and she feared deeply that Samuel would not survive the battlefield. If it had been anything else, Tristan might have helped, but when it came to enlisting, there was nothing he could do, because he knew how stubborn his younger brother could be. Overwhelmed with sorrow, Susanna fell into Tristan's arms, and in that moment, Tristan made a silent decision. If he could not change Samuel's mind, then he would enlist with him, to protect him with his life, and to give Susanna some peace of mind. Neither of them offered an explanation for that ambiguous moment. Tristan left the room under his brother's incredulous gaze. The next day, the three brothers packed their bags to head for the front lines, and one by one, they said goodbye to their family and friends. Samuel held Susanna tightly in his arms. Their father knew that no words could change anything now, so he simply told his sons to come home safe, and he gave Tristan one last special instruction: to take good care of Samuel. Watching their loved ones leave, those who stayed behind could only pray. The real battlefield was far crueler than anyone had imagined. Shells rained down around them, and broken bodies lay everywhere, nothing like what Samuel had pictured in his mind. Fortunately, Tristan never left his side, pulling him back from death again and again. After surviving multiple brushes with death, Samuel came to realize how fragile life truly was. In a letter to Susanna, he confessed his regret about coming to war and his regret for not listening to his second brother and becoming a true husband to her. He told Susanna not to worry because Tristan was always protecting him, and that when he returned from the war, he would marry her right away. He urged her to stay at the ranch and wait for him. But fate did not grant this couple the chance to meet again. During one battle, a shell landed right beside Alfred, and his leg was blown off, though his life was spared. When Tristan came to visit him, a comrade delivered a shocking message. Samuel had volunteered to take the place of a scout and go on the most dangerous mission at the front. The moment Tristan heard this, he bolted out like a madman. Meanwhile, Samuel, with no combat experience, had fallen into an enemy ambush. He ran about like a headless bird and in his panic stumbled into a cloud of poison gas. Soon, he could no longer see. Blindly feeling his way forward, he became entangled in barbed wire. He struggled desperately but could not break free. Driven by raw survival instinct, Samuel cried out his brother's name. But when Tristan finally arrived, it was already too late. Watching his younger brother die before his eyes, Tristan was overcome with grief. He desperately picked up his brother, wanting to take him home, but he fell again and again. In the end, he had no choice but to swallow his pain, pull out a dagger, and pierce his brother's chest. This was the rule one stab had taught Tristan since childhood. Only by taking out the heart after death could the soul be released. At night, he smeared his brother's blood across his face to paint the family's totem. Then, under the cover of darkness, he slipped into the enemy camp and began a night of ruthless vengeance. With every man he killed, he cut away their scalp. That night, he was like a phantom in the darkness, slaughtering until dawn. When morning came, he returned on horseback, his body draped with the scalps of his enemies, and everyone was stunned at the sight. His expression was that of a warrior returned from hell, yet his eyes were hollow and empty. His brother's soul was released, but his own had nowhere left to rest. After the war ended, Tristan did not return home, but instead set sail with one stab. The torment of watching his younger brother die before his eyes left a shadow he could never erase, so he chose exile, hoping the vast sea would slowly wash away his grief. Meanwhile, Alfred brought back his brother's heart. The thing their father had feared the most had finally happened. The family buried Samuel in a snow valley surrounded by mountains, the place he had loved most when he was alive. Yet compared to her fiancé's death, what weighed more on Susanna's mind was where Tristan had gone. Now that Samuel was gone, she had no reason to stay on the ranch, but heavy snow had sealed the mountains and the railroads were blocked, so William insisted she stay until spring. He told Susanna, "As long as you wish, this will always be your home." And so she continued to live on at the ranch. As time passed, the family seemed to slowly come to terms with Samuel's death. One day, Alfred took Susanna to visit Samuel's grave. Believing the time was right, Alfred finally gathered his courage and confessed his love to Susanna. When Susanna first arrived on the prairie, galloping freely on horseback, she radiated a unique charm, and Alfred had fallen for her then. But because she was his younger brother's fiancée, he had buried those feelings deep in his heart. Now that Samuel had been gone for some time, Alfred could no longer hold back what he felt. But Susanna refused his heartfelt confession. From the day she arrived at the ranch, that wild, untamed Tristan had taken root in her heart forever. Although Susanna did not accept him, Alfred believed that such quiet companionship would one day move her. But fate played a cruel trick on him once again. Tristan's return shattered all his hopes. Susanna stared intently at Tristan through the window screen, her eyes brimming with unconcealed joy. And Alfred finally understood why she had refused him. After a period of self-exile, Tristan found the courage to face Samuel's grave at last, but even then he wept bitterly.
Couldn't save him.
Drowning in guilt for not being able to save him. The two who loved each other no longer had anything to hold them back, and they finally came together. But while some rejoiced, others despaired. At dinner, Alfred, consumed by jealousy, deliberately picked a fight and mocked Tristan. Tristan did not argue, but rose in fury and stormed out, and Susanna immediately ran after him without hesitation. Two wounded souls clung to each other, and that night they gave themselves over, seeking solace in one another. The next morning, a heartbroken Alfred confronted Tristan, arguing fiercely that someone as reckless as him could never give Susanna happiness.
Do you love her? Or did you seduce her just to spite me?
It's not what I did.
Then Alfred went so far as to accuse Tristan of deliberately letting Samuel die on the battlefield just to take Susanna for himself. Hearing those words, Tristan erupted in rage and nearly came to blows with him. From that moment, a rift grew between the brothers, and they went their separate ways. Alfred left for the city, where with his sharp mind and refined ways, he built a thriving career. Yet in the lonely hours of night, he still suffered, tormented by the feud with his brother and the ache of his love for Susanna. Tristan and Susanna, meanwhile, stayed on the ranch, living a life of freedom without restraint. Had things remained this way, perhaps it could have been a happy ending. But as the years went by, Tristan could never escape the shadow of failing to save Samuel. One day, while herding, Tristan came across a calf caught in barbed wire. He wanted to reach out and save it, but it was already too late. The bloody scene dragged him back into the nightmares of war. At last, to end its suffering, Tristan put the calf down with a shot. But instead of finding peace, he fell into even deeper torment, riding his horse wildly across the prairie while screaming, waking in terror at night, and nearly stabbing the woman lying beside him. The demons within him pulled him down into a bottomless pit. Sensing Tristan's torment, Susanna gently comforted him. "If we have a son, we'll name him Samuel. If we have a daughter, we'll call her Isabel." While chopping wood, his father mentioned Alfred's thriving career, and Tristan, feeling sensitive, said it was all because he was useless, for he had failed to protect his younger brother. His father stated that fate is unchangeable, all is God's will. Just then, one stab rushed in to report that a grizzly bear had been spotted on the ranch, and instantly Tristan's desire to conquer was ignited. He set out at once, tracked the bear, loaded his rifle, and aimed, finger resting on the trigger. But then Tristan hesitated. A long moment passed, yet he couldn't pull the trigger, because one stab had once told him that the tribal elders said when a man and a beast shed each other's blood, they become one. Tristan seemed to hear the bear's voice roaring inside him, and he knew that unless he could tame it completely, his heart would never find peace. The next day, Tristan packed his bags, ready once again to set off on a long journey. Everyone knew of his pain, and no one tried to stop him, except for Susanna, who made one last attempt to hold him back.
Or if I were pregnant, would you still be going?
Seeing that Tristan's mind was made up, Susanna confessed her love with all her heart. No matter how long he was gone, she would wait for him. She would always wait for him, until the end of time. Tristan's eyes were already filled with tears, and the countless words in his heart turned into a silent nod. On that bleak autumn morning, Tristan rode away on horseback. Little Isabel, too, ran after him, her eyes clear and firm, convinced that Tristan would surely return. Just like that, this untamed man once again set out on the road of wandering, drifting aimlessly across the sea beneath the starry sky, exiling his soul. He even visited remote tribes and lived with the native people. Back home, Susanna, waiting for Tristan, felt as if she were serving a life sentence. The endless waiting brought her unbearable torment. She tried writing many letters but had no idea where to send them, until one day Tristan, believing his soul had fallen into an abyss from which it could never return, sent Susanna a letter. "Let's break up. Think of me as already dead." After reading it, Susanna was heartbroken beyond words. She had never imagined that, after all her waiting, this would be the answer. But just then, Alfred returned in glory. He told his father that he planned to run for Congress. What should have been a moment of pride only enraged his father, who cursed him angrily, calling him a fool for aiding those in power. The reason was simple. The government had always lacked humanity. Otherwise, they would never have wiped out an entire tribe of native people, nor started the war that cost Samuel his life. But Alfred said, "That is precisely why I have an even greater responsibility to bring wisdom and humanity into Congress." Since they could not agree, Alfred chose not to argue further. Yet as he was leaving, he happened to find Susanna clutching the breakup letter, devastated. Initially, Alfred only meant to offer comforting words, but seeing her tear-streaked face, he couldn't help but reach out and touch it. Unexpectedly, his father saw this scene and furiously denounced Alfred as shameless, accusing him of coveting his brother's woman. At that, Alfred decided to endure no longer, releasing all the resentment he had buried inside.
Please!
I loved her! I love her still. And he stole her from me. Hell, if you want to know the truth of it, he stole her from Samuel before the war.
God help me, I'll kill you.
He threw Tristan's letter into his father's hands. Even though William believed firmly in Tristan's character, the moment he read the words, he collapsed to the ground. Soon after, he suffered a stroke, and overnight his hair turned completely white. Susanna, deeply wounded by Tristan, chose to leave with Alfred. Better to accept a love that was close at hand than to wait forever for one that was out of reach. Susanna moved to the bustling city where her daily life consisted of tending flowers in the garden and attending glamorous banquets. Yet, amid the noise, she smoked in solitude, looking utterly out of place with the merriment around her. Meanwhile, Tristan remained unheard of. No one knew where he had gone. And so the years passed, until one springtime, Tristan returned to the ranch with a herd of fine horses after years away. He was still as free-spirited as ever, but years of wandering had made him more mature, and it seemed the nightmares of the past had finally been cast away. As Tristan embraced one stab warmly, his father staggered out of the room. Once strong and proud, now with a crooked mouth and slurred speech, William's condition made Tristan's eyes well up with guilt. But his father was overjoyed, even trembling with excitement as he wrote on a small chalkboard, "Glad you came back." Tristan had brought gifts for everyone, including Isabel and Susanna. But the house suddenly fell silent. A servant told Tristan that Susanna had married Alfred years ago, that he was now a congressman, and they lived in Helena. Hearing this, Tristan showed no surprise. After all, he was the one who ended it all. He was the one who broke her heart. And now that Susanna was living a better life with his brother, it could not have been a better outcome. Then one stab explained that after the war, the price of livestock had collapsed, and William had lost all his savings. Tristan, full of confidence, declared he would earn it all back. Although the government had issued prohibition at that time and Alfred supported it, Tristan still decided to secretly sell liquor and go against the government. This plan had William's full support, but before starting anything, Tristan chose to visit his brother's home and see Susanna one last time, perhaps to settle the regret in his heart, or perhaps to give her an explanation. The moment Susanna noticed Tristan, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. Susanna removed the bracelet Tristan had once given her and returned it to him. Once deeply in love, the two lovers, now bound by their identities, could not voice their regrets, no matter how much they had. The heart Susanna had struggled so hard to put down once again rippled with emotion. After offering her his blessing, Tristan showed no hesitation, turned, and walked away. Back at the ranch, Tristan once again visited the grave of his younger brother Samuel. But unlike before, this time his heart was calm, no longer tormented by the unease and guilt of the past. Tristan decided to take over his father's duties, to manage the ranch, and return to a life of peace. In the stables he encountered Isabel too, the little girl who once swore she would marry him, now grown into a graceful young woman. In the days that followed, Tristan began secretly selling liquor in town despite prohibition. With Isabel too by his side, Tristan found temporary peace. The bear inside him fell back into slumber, and before long the two pledged themselves to one another. Meanwhile, Alfred told Susanna that Tristan was about to marry Isabel too. The news pierced Susanna's heart like a blade.
You know, I can't imagine what the hell is Decker thinking of to allow this.
Perhaps he's thinking of his daughter's happiness.
Soon came the wedding day of Tristan and Isabel too. Isabel, who had not returned in years, came back to the ranch and gifted Isabel too a stunning wedding dress. With their family as witnesses, Tristan and Isabel too successfully walked into marriage together. Time passed, and she gave Tristan a son, whom he named Samuel. But one night, after delivering liquor to a customer, Tristan was suddenly ambushed on his way back to the ranch. Ever since funding Alfred's rise to congressman, the O'Banion brothers had taken control of the city, using their influence to dominate the liquor trade during Prohibition. At first, they had ignored Tristan's secret dealings, but as his liquor grew more popular, their business began to suffer. That night, they came to issue him a warning. But Tristan, upon hearing this, was completely indifferent, even when they said that he was alive only because of his elder brother Alfred. Days later, Alfred and Susanna crossed paths with Tristan and his family at a fair. By then, Tristan and Isabel too had welcomed a lovely daughter. When Susanna learned that Tristan's son was named Samuel, she broke down completely, for that was the name she and Tristan had once agreed they would give to their own child.
Hello, who is this lady?
I'm your Aunt Susanna. I used to know your Uncle Samuel, who died in the war. I think you look like him.
That's what Grandpa says.
He was very brave.
Seeing Tristan immersed in happiness, Susanna could not face him with composure. If only she had waited a few more years, it would have been her standing at Tristan's side, but fate allowed no what if. After they parted, Tristan continued his liquor trade, but this time he was followed again by the O'Banion brothers' men. After collecting payment, he and his family were heading back when they were suddenly stopped by the police. The officers accused them of selling illegal liquor and tried to take them in. Tristan attempted to reason with them, but without warning, the police opened fire around them. In the chaos, Isabel too was struck by a bullet and died instantly. Tristan, enraged, rushed forward to seize the policeman's machine gun and beat him half to death with the butt of the weapon, but in the end, he was outnumbered, overpowered, and pinned to the ground, while the money he had earned was stolen by the O'Banion brothers. No one cared about Isabel II's death. Just like that, Tristan's hard-won peace was shattered again. He dragged his wounded body and carried his wife's body back home. The family buried her beside Samuel's grave. When Alfred received the news, he returned at once, but their father still refused to see him, blaming the government yet again for Isabel II's death. Alfred came for two reasons: to mourn Isabel II, and to persuade Tristan to confess and serve 30 days in prison, for he had nearly killed a police officer. The officer who opened fire would face nothing more than a reprimand, while the O'Banion brothers would remain untouched. Hearing the news, Tristan gnashed his teeth in fury, but for the sake of his family, he still went to the police station to turn himself in. When Susanna heard the news, she secretly went to see him behind Alfred's back. The moment they met, the love they still held for each other broke free, and they embraced uncontrollably. Susanna even spoke cruel words, admitting that she had always hoped Isabel II would die so that she could stay with Tristan forever. Ultimately, Tristan persuaded her to return to his brother. His heart now belonged entirely to the departed Isabel II. As he looked down at the O'Banion brothers roaming free, his heart ignited with the fire of revenge. On the day of his release, one stab came to fetch him and handed him a dagger. Isabel II's father, Decker, and one stab polished the rifles that had not been used for many years. They waited at the mountain pass for the policeman who had killed Isabel II to appear. Tristan followed the O'Banion brothers from the rooftops. Unfortunately, upon reaching a warehouse entrance, James O'Banion drove off in a car, leaving only one target behind. Back home, Susanna could no longer bear the torment in her heart. After a long struggle, she cut her hair short, raised the gun, and ended her own life. Perhaps this was her final destination. Meanwhile, hidden in the hills, Decker shot out the policeman's tire. As the officer stepped out to check, Decker fired 2 more shots, killing him instantly, and avenged his daughter Isabel II. At the same time, Tristan slipped into the warehouse and caught John's attention. Hearing the sound, he drew his gun and cautiously walked inside. From the shadows, Tristan struck him down with a crate, and when John rose to fight back, Tristan drove him onto a pitchfork, ending his life. Tristan knew this act would bring James's ruthless retaliation. To keep his family safe, he decided to leave once again. Before departing, he received a letter from Alfred bearing the dreadful news of Susanna's death. Within days, Alfred transported Susanna's body back to the ranch, burying her beside Samuel's grave. He poured out years of resentment to Tristan.
I followed all the rules, and you followed none of them. And they all loved you more. Samuel, Father, in my own way.
Tristan felt he had wronged his brother, and he said nothing, silently packing his bags, ready once again to wander. But outside the door stood James and several policemen. Clearly they had come for revenge. Tristan knew his fate. He only asked that they not execute him in front of his children. Just then, his father stepped out, pretending to ask what was happening, and gave a sharp whistle. The neigh of horses instantly drew everyone's attention. Colonel Ludlow unleashed his fiercest side to protect his son. Another officer raised his gun at William, and Tristan rushed forward to shield his father. But that policeman was suddenly shot and fell to the ground. It was Alfred. And at the moment of his family's greatest peril, he chose to protect his father and brother, even if it meant losing his position. In that moment, William finally let go of all his pride and embraced Alfred tightly. Their rift was at last healed. Afterward, Tristan entrusted his children to his brother's care. He chose once again to wander. Perhaps he was never meant to belong anywhere, nor should he accept anyone's love. Everyone who loved him had died one by one, while his own life was as unyielding as stone. and his loneliness could never be understood. Decades later, fate circled back to where it all began. Tristan once more chose to face the grizzly bear, but this time fortune did not favor him, and he died out on the path of wandering. For him, perhaps this was the best ending. We cannot resist the wildness Tristan brought as he rode across the plains. We cannot stop Alfred from standing out among the crowd with the glow of civilization. We cannot prevent Samuel from walking into a war he did not understand and losing his life. All three embody love's multifaceted nature. It can nourish the soul, yet is also God's imperfect creation, fraught with contradiction and destructive power. Tristan was like the fire of the wild, free and blazing, but fleeting. Alfred was like the ice of order, refined and steady, but lifeless. Samuel was like the fog of ideals, pure and tragic, yet doomed to be pierced by reality. And all of these are beyond the reach of ordinary people. We cannot be free like Tristan, staying true to our souls. We cannot be loyal like Alfred, rising above the world through love and duty. Nor can we be like Samuel, sacrificing everything for ideals. Instead, Susanna carried the shadow of common humanity. She chooses persistence for love and dreams. Yet when love chooses freedom, she dares not follow. The dream is too distant, she must let go. After all, not everyone can firmly follow the voice of their own heart. So not everyone can be like Isabel too, who from childhood insisted, "He is my man," and stubbornly waited for that day to come. Perhaps time was mocking us, making us, like Susanna, always miss the ones we love most, always brush past our most beautiful dreams. So all we can do is believe in fate and waiting, comforting ourselves as we move from crying in jealousy to smiling in envy, telling ourselves that ordinary life is the true essence. Fate is cruel. Isabel II's wedding dress and Samuel riding on Tristan's shoulders, those were originally meant to be Susanna's. After years of hollow and hopeless waiting, she had to endure the sorrow of giving her love and her dream away to others. For Susanna, such love was too heavy to bear. Tormented by hollow and hopeless waiting, only death gave her waiting a limit. Perhaps life itself is exile and wandering, but most people hand themselves over to the mundane world, tied down by others and by society's tracks. And the voice of the heart, long before we learned how to flatter, had already vanished. Or perhaps it lingers forever, echoing alone in our ears.